Hi, CvCISO Podcast listeners. Welcome to episode 52 of the CvCISO Podcast. My name is Evan Francine. I'm speaking quickly because I pulled an all-nighter and I might be a little popped up on caffeine. Yeah, caffeine. I don't think there was anything else in that drink. Anyway, welcome Dave and Jordan and Meg. Dave, it's your topic today. What's the topic for the CvCISO Podcast, episode number 51? Two. Can we do 51 over again and just make this one 51 then?
No, you missed 51.
Did we have cake for the 50th? Can we make a cake?
We did
I
do
like
it.
cake.
50th.
Oh, yeah.
All right, here's a quiz for you. How do you say cake in Spanish?
Cake.
El Keiko.
El Keiko. You even have a Mexican wife, don't you?
Yeah, but she's not home right now.
El Keiko. El Keiko. I have a buddy who comes down here. He's been down here like 6-7 times. He's from your neck of the woods, Meg. He's Milwaukee area or whatever. And he's such a dipshit. He does it all the time. Like he's even studying Spanish. He's like, we're doing Duolingo together. And he would do something like that. Can I have a Keiko, por favor? It's like you don't have to add O at the end of por favor.
Is he the one we played? Is he the one we played bags with? Remember when we were playing bags and he was horrible?
Matt Goodacre. Yeah, it is him. Yeah. He's such a dipshit, man. I love him, though, because he reminds me of me. All right. Anyway, the way you say, what word was it? Oh, cake in Spanish is pastel. Pastel,
of course.
Yeah. One of my ear things fell out, so you guys are just going to have to take it from here while I go down here and get my ear thing.
All right.
I'm going to say more than one cake is not Los Keikos. That's rude.
I believe it's Los Cacos.
Yeah.
Careful now. Careful.
You be careful.
Yeah. If you're not back in a certain amount of time.
Do you know how you say no in Spanish?
No.
No bueno.
No. No.
Look, I'm down here.
Who's that TV show guy that looks over the fence?
Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
Found it.
Nice.
Hey, Wilson, can you help me solve my marriage?
What's the topic today, Dave? I believe it's your choice.
We just changed the topic. Help me save my marriage.
How to stay married as a CvCISO.
Yeah.
That needs to be a topic, I think, at some point.
Yeah, or how to get spousal support when you're.
It's funny you just said that, and my wife just walked into my office.
Now you're hiding. Why are you hiding? Is that the tip? Stay married by just avoiding them.
I don't know me.
They can't divorce me if they can't find me.
Can't serve me papers if you don't know where I'm at.
Sorry.
Gordon, and this could be a future podcast as well, but one of the keys to that success is managing expectations. And if you can get them to lower their expectations enough, the amount of times you've come up short goes down proportionately.
Under promise, over deliver.
You should ask my wife, Marlis, about expectations sometime when you get a chance, because she doesn't even have expectations anymore.
You've won.
I know, I totally did.
Gave up on that a long time ago.
Yeah, it was early on in the marriage where she was, I just told her, like, expectations are bad. You shouldn't have expectations. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm never going to meet him. I mean, let's just get it straight. If you don't have expectations, then I can't disappoint you.
You have reached peak meta.
So ask her though sometime, because she'll preach to you how important it is not to have expectations in your marriage. I totally social engineered that one. It was so awesome.
Yeah, her and Sylvia could go on for an extended period of time on that one.
She also believes that you shouldn't have expectations, or you should.
No, that that you should not.
Oh yeah, okay.
She given we're deep enough that she's given up that ideological dream.
We just
I'm going to have
celebrated.
expectations of my partner.
We just celebrated 31 years of marriage, and I still have expectations.
Huh?
There's just Tuesday, 31 years.
Well,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
yes, congratulations. We will start your psychoanalysis session after the podcast.
That's not why people are tuning in today.
Yeah.
Oh, why are they tuning in today, Jordan?
To hear about Dave's sweet topic.
Dave, give us a sweet topic. Lay it on us, my brother.
All righty. One sweet topic coming up. Essential questions a vCISO needs to ask up front.
Yes.
Yeah.
Up front, like meaning before you sign the contract?
Yes. Yeah. And really, the driver behind it was to talk about how important credibility. Well, we talked about credibility in the podcast a couple ago, but building that relationship, how important trust, communication, and the ability to confide and let them know that you are understanding what's important to them.
Is this coming from a sales perspective? Is this kind of like as you're trying to cultivate that relationship to close a sale? Or are you thinking about it from a different perspective?
This is one or two of the lectures, isn't it, from the CvCISO 1 foundation course?
Yeah.
Sort of like this.
I got into that, into scoping. Jordan, like, to me, it's always about relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
Sales can be a subset of that. Like even when I had my company, there was a lot of times I'd talk to somebody, get along with them really well, and what we did was not a good match for them at that time. And just be able to say, look, we still get along. It doesn't mean we can't. There might not be an opportunity to do business. Really?
So we're going to do some role playing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Wow.
Sorry about that.
Dude, I didn't even know that model of mask existed.
So now
And it really shouldn't exist.
I haven't slept in like...
I knew the insanity of Evan Francine, but the insanity of Evan Francine when he hasn't slept?
I haven't slept for a long time. It's like 28 hours. Sorry, you were saying something?
Continue, Dave.
But Jordan, just, whether it's we're doing business or sales today or down the road, we can still do the right thing and work to build a relationship with the person.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like two sides of the coin. I mean, what we're going to talk about on one side, it will probably help you in the sales process because, of the things that you're communicating with them, but then also it's going to help you on the back end to actually perform.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of times there's a thing I bank on heavily that I just call relationship equity. That as I get to know somebody more and more over time, trying to do right by them, you invest in the relationship. And, and there's going to be times where a relationship hits challenges. And you tap into some of that equity. And this is really just what I wanted to have us chat about is how important all of that is. You don't turn relationships on when you go to work. This is kind of how we all are all the time, but then this is what we do professionally. So, if like if it was you and I need to learn about your business. How does your business make money? What are the drivers in that? Because that's all, it lets me know more about you, more about the business. If we are going to do work together, it gives me a better scope and understanding of where you're coming from. But on the flip side, it lets you know that I'm paying attention and that what's important to you is important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's number one. So number one of the essential things to ask is, what's the bullet point?
And just really tell me about your business. How do you make money? Why does your business exist? At some point in time, somebody said, hey, I got an idea for a business. And someone else said, ooh, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
And, and maybe that falls into the mission. Maybe that's changed because you're going to find if they come back and go, well, we're private equity. We know the direction that conversation's going to go. And it's going to be much more about the dollars very transparently, or, what is your mission? And then and then that gives us something foundational. So yeah, just tell me what you do, why it's important to you.
Yeah.
And what do you feel I need to know about your business if we were going to do anything together?
I think Evan speaks to that in the course. Chapter 3 is the relationship building part of the course. But, Evan, you always say that the language of business is accounting. And so it makes sense to start with that because that's what's important to the organization is how they're going to make money or how they do make money. And then you kind of figuring out a way to create your language around that.
Yeah. I mean, I've been accused a lot of times over the years of trying to social engineer the organization. And there's a lot of truth to that. Not social engineer them to take advantage of them, but to social engineer them to do the right things, to manage information security risk well. Well, in order to socially engineer somebody, you have to study them. It's certainly relationship, but it's relationship for the sake of helping them. It's not relationship for the sake of, like, I need a friend kind of relationship. You know what I mean? So yeah, study them. See, when we always advise, before you ever even engage with the organization, do research on the organization. Try to figure out, what their mission is, what their goals are, what their objectives are. Is there any recent news about the organization? Did they have any recent press releases that might be exciting to reference or, build into this story? The leaders, because you're never really doing business with the business. You're doing business with a person. So that it's this one-on-one relationship. And enough over the years that people are motivated, try to figure out what motivates them. So you might have the company mission is this, but this person that I'm talking to is definitely an ego-driven person. Well, then that changes the way I interact with them. Right. But the more knowledge you have about the company that you're trying to serve, the better you're going to be able to serve them, for sure.
I like the reconnaissance on the front end. I also like, as if when you're in front of them, I like to feel like their emotion about it too. So, because there's one thing, we talked about, like, how does the company generate revenue? That's of course important because businesses are in business to make money, like Evan always says. So yeah, you have to care about their financial success. But I do like the mission side of it, and and asking them that, you can research it and find it online as much as you can, but then when you ask them to talk about it and actually feel the passion coming from them, and maybe, to Evan's point, maybe it's not, the person you're interacting with, maybe they're not as connected to the mission. I would hope so. But mission, core values, what their purpose is. I love all that part of it because you should care about helping them hit their mission. And I think you get something out of it too by connecting. The mission side of it is something I always talk about with clients on the front end, whether it's during the sales process or during the onboarding, because I want to connect to it too. Like, if it's a mission that I can get behind, then I have purpose to what I'm doing. When I'm helping them as a vCISO, I'm helping reach that mission too, and you can connect it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find that common objective to work towards together. Yeah, doing the open source and understanding that as best as you can going in makes you more informed. But if you still ask the person to tell you what's driving them, then you can kind of hear they echoing what you saw online, or are you, like Evan said, if you're talking to an individual and that person's there for a different reason, it'll come out. And it kind of helps give you better overall context of what the relationship would be like were you to have the opportunity to work together.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, because some organizations are definitely more purpose-driven than they are revenue-driven. They understand that, my favorite business book of all time is Start With Why by Simon Sinek, which, like Apple is a good case study that he uses. Obviously, Apple makes boatloads of money, but it's really their why, their purpose that drives that organization. So for me, I don't necessarily, as a vCISO, I don't think I've come out and asked, how does the company generate revenue? It's more just tell me, like you said, Dave, tell me about your company. Tell me how you operate, what makes this place special, what gets people up in the morning, what motivates people. At the end of the day, as a vCISO, beyond just, information security stuff, I need to provide value to the organization. And sometimes that value is, related to the money thing, but yeah, it's got to be value, and I've got to be able to defend that. And you talked earlier about, the purpose, how important it is to be credible. I've advised, the FR Secure sales team for years, you really only need 3 things to get new customers: trust, credibility, and likability. So, focus on that. And I think over the years now, I've kind of eroded some of my credibility because I'm crazy and stuff. But back when I wasn't crazy, I was really good at security things.
Well, and Jordan, best way I can say it is like when you're speaking with somebody up front, both sides are interviewing each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're measuring you up, and you've got your questions to kind of measure up, because ultimately it's like the line of what is the objective of a first date, and the answer, and I got that wrong when I was a lot younger, but the correct answer is to determine if you want to have a second date.
Mm-hmm.
And that ties in foundationally to what that relationship is. Like, I was at a breakfast thing yesterday, and these were not people I'd necessarily be doing business with directly, but they are extremely knowledgeable professionals that I'm not trying to sell anything, but I'm trying to get to know them better. And then it becomes, maybe there's someone they know that I could add value to. And that ties into, like you were saying, Evan, the likability, the credibility.
Yeah.
So we can add value.
Have you ever noticed, like, in your own like personal life? I don't, because I grew up an only child, and I'm kind of a loner anyway. But it seems like the harder you try to make friends, the harder it is to make friends. Have you noticed that? Because I think a lot of times as vCISOs, we try too hard to. I think at the end of the day, just be yourself. Just be transparent. Don't come off as desperate, like I need to have this customer. Even though if you know in your mind that you're the best candidate to serve this customer's needs, it's going to suck if you get off on the foot of, I have to be this person that I'm not really this person, and then try to serve them as their vCISO over the length of the contract, as opposed to just going into this being yourself, like you would go into any other, I think, healthy relationship. You let the conversation go where it goes. Spend time listening to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Pick up on little cues. When you mention something like information security, do they shudder? Do they kind of like, give off this vibe like, I don't like that shit. I don't want to talk about that. Well, pick up on those things and just be yourself. So
people
go ahead.
People sniff out posturing. Like, I can just sniff out posturing, and it's such a turnoff when there's like this ego that's involved. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, is not to come from like this egotistical place, being yourself, but understanding nobody's going to like it if you come across as the know-it-all.
Yeah.
Well, and if you ever notice, the best relationships we have, each of us, are the ones that we have to work on the relationship itself the least. We can just let the other stuff. Yeah, the other stuff just flows. And, so to
I would challenge that a little bit. I would challenge that and say that I think.
Where's your challenge card? You can't just call out a challenge if you don't got a challenge card.
Yeah, what are we playing? Uno here?
We've got controversy.
Shit, she had a challenge card. My bad.
What I'm saying is that I think some of the, at least in my life, like some of the most meaningful, deep relationships are the ones where you're able to be honest and real and speak truth in love. That, that helps build the relationship and helps it grow deeper instead of staying at a surfacey level.
Yeah, and that's not what I meant.
Challenge card.
What I meant was, all right, you're up.
I don't really have a challenge. I just have one. That's all.
But no, to your point, Meg. Yeah, if you and I get along well, it's inevitable, whether we're working both on the same side of the counter or you or I are on opposite sides of the counter. That's what I meant by kind of that relationship equity, where the relationship's going to run into challenges. It's inevitable, but the better that you can get along just as people, because at that point, we're not necessarily, it's not like I'm working to sell you on something. It's just, yeah, this sucks. Here we are. Are we going to navigate through it? And we come out on the opposite side of that stronger, The challenges are either going to make the relationship stronger or tear it apart.
Yeah. That's why, and I think that's part of the reason why I struggle. I mean, I think it's good guidance, right? To have these top 5 questions that you should ask before you engage. I think that's important. But then it's also like, let the conversation go where it goes, be natural with it. Know that these are goals. Like, I want to understand how the company makes money, right? I want to, understand, but that would come as just part of the relationship, wouldn't it? It would just come as just part of the conversation, getting to know you.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like an interview.
Right. It'd be like my wife, right? The most important non-Jesus relationship I have is I just know these things based on, the relationship, but I don't come right out and ask her, like, what's your favorite color? Because she'd be like, are you an idiot? I'm like, yes, I am an idiot.
Yeah.
I think one of the points I'm taking away from this too, as we're marinating on it, is that it's not really about the question pulled.
Yeah, I'll be back. I have another meeting. I forgot I'm double booked. You guys keep talking.
He's going to get us pulled pork.
No, I just got a text. I just got a text from John Armin. You able to join us today? And I'm like, I didn't. Yes,
I have a hard meeting every morning.
Right there.
Every Friday.
I'll be right there. So you guys continue to talk. I'll be back. Or if I don't come back, just enjoy your weekend. I love you. You're beautiful people.
Love you too.
Yeah, I love you back, brother.
Where was I? Oh yeah. What I'm taking away, where my mind's going is that it's not necessarily about the questions as much as training yourself to care about these things. Like these are things you should care about as a vCISO. What their mission is, and number two, I don't think we've even brought it up yet, but like number two that you shared with us, what differentiates the company from its competitors. Like to your guys' point. You probably don't want to be, it's not an interview. You're not just saying, okay, so how do you make money? Who are your competitors? Like, and how do you differentiate it? But these are things you have to care about. Teach yourself, learn how to care about those things authentically. It's not a smoke and mirrors show either. Like, I'm going to pretend like I'm interested in their business,
Yeah. Well, and your actions after that will justify, that you care and where you're coming from. But Evan touched on it where, I've said it before. If you understand the technology and you understand yourself and there's enough experience, the remainder is social engineering. And I don't mean it in a negative way. I'm not trying to social engineer you into signing the agreement that we're going to work together. I need to ask or understand how the business works. And we've got, kind of the questions in the back of our mind. And so when we're listening, and if they're not answering the question, then we at least know, hey, let me just ask, okay, so I get you make this widget, but what makes your widget different? Why? If I'm the customer, I'm not even talking about being a vCISO. I'm just somebody who wants to buy or needs to buy a widget. What's the difference with your widget? And it'll come out what those unique differentiators are. And you can better understand it, because as those come out, anything that we're doing rolls up into risk management and identifying what that risk is and being able to correlate it to the business. And the more that we understand ultimately how they make money, what are unique differentiators, is going to play into ultimately how we're working to help them be successful and add value in the role that we're bringing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, like, knowing these things and caring about those things will help you as a vCISO operate at a high level. One question I'm curious about is, when you approach that, when you are approaching the conversation this way, I would think for the most part, they love talking about their business like this. They love that type of a conversation. Have you ever had it where they don't? Maybe they are confused as to, look, I just want you to tell me about your vCISO
Why
stuff.
are
Like,
we going here?
why are you, like, I don't get how this connects. Why do you need to know how I make money? Like, have you ever had that kind of a pushback?
Very little. I mean, where it comes from more is if it's a small business, maybe you're talking to more of a principal, and they're the ones that define what is that mission, what is the company. If it's larger, maybe even if it's like a municipality, now you're talking to somebody who's more in a specific role and they're not necessarily the one that created the mission. And maybe they were told by up above, you shall do this. You need a consultant because of this law that passed.
Yeah. Go interview 3 vCISOs and pick one or something like.
Yeah, go get 3 quotes and bring me the cheapest or, kind of a thing. But so that ties into knowing who you're talking to and where they fit in the overall hierarchy. And that'll kind of help you resonate. Because the reality is, if that person, I have had where the person told me straight up the definition of success was to make it to retirement. And it was 9 months away. So I kind of knew where the role, but those few words give it that proper context, kind of a thing. But if you do get that kind of ties into what a couple of the other questions are of, if they just say, just tell me about your service, then you can describe it. But just to me, a better way to say it is, if we're going to do a 1-year engagement, or a 3-year, whatever that number is, what is your definition of success at the end of this?
Mm-hmm.
How do we know when the term runs up that we can look at each other, high five each other and say, we did it. We kicked ass. And if they tell you, and I've had a lot of people tell me, I want to know what you know. I want you to work yourself out of a job, because I want your job within this company. That's cool. I mean, you at least know, and now you're kind of connecting at that level. And wherever you can, on whatever level where you can make that connection, then you can say, okay, well, based on this understood definition of success, I can tell you how our program works and how our program can support what you're looking for. So at the end of the day, or at the end of the engagement, we both feel we were successful. So it's the same thing. We're just kind of reverse or inverse order of how it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that, and I'm glad you brought it up, because to me, that's kind of where the social engineering comes in. Meaning, I understand what they're asking. I understand what they need to know. But if I can correlate it to meet them where their perception is, the level of connections a whole lot higher. It's still to me, relationships are relationships, and sales are relationships that have commerce as a component. So we just add that layer to it and then say, okay, based on that, you're giving them what they're looking for. You just, rather than kind of we're not just straightforward asking these questions and they're not straightforward asking those. Because if you can't, go ahead. I'm sorry, bro. Were you going to say something?
I did have one question. How often would you say it's important to check in on whether or not you are progressing properly towards the success that they defined, or even check in to say, hey, is this still how you're defining success with this relationship?
Informally, all the time, literally in each call, where are we at? A lot of times those check-in calls, it's, hey, I know we have our agenda because it's a reflection of the roadmap and the things that we said we were going to work on. And we're going to dive into those. But before we even start, is there anything out of the ordinary, or did something happen between the last time that we chatted that we want to talk about? Did you have a breach? Do you have a friend that had a breach? Did you see something in the news that, maybe, oh, okay, sure, let's take 5 minutes to talk about tariffs, kind of a thing, because that may impact how the business, quote unquote, makes money. But we can say, and I get it, the question is, how do you make money? But another way to ask it or understand it is, how do these changes impact the livelihoods of the people that you're working with? The tariff's one thing, but it can mean something very different if you're in construction, versus selling a SaaS service kind of a thing. Does that make sense? And then that's how you get to kind of know them. And then one of the other questions, see, here I am even asking the questions out of order. When they say, tell me about your service, what you can ask, what brought us together? Why do you even think you need this? John Herman and I will have this conversation often where when he was doing sales, the person would say, I need a pen test. And you offer him. And he would say, well, I got about 20 questions I need to ask you before I even want to talk about that. So at the end of it, we can understand if a pen test is truly what is best for you, what's going to give you the best value at this time on where you're at.
A lot of what you're saying, just in reflection of kind of the theme of what I'm hearing is, and which we talk about in class as well, is the understanding the why. Like it's really you're driving at, in all these questions, you're really trying to understand the whys. What's the why behind the financial game? What's the why behind why you think you need a vCISO? Why you think this relationship is important? That I'm just making a note that seems to be a common theme. Well, the backward design too, like that's the part that's intriguing to me, because as a former educator, everything we did was the backward design, like understanding what the outcome is, and then how do we work backwards? How do we determine the steps in order to get us to that goal?
Exactly. It's a more universal energy or dynamic that it applies to so many things. We're just applying it to vCISO here. But that's, Meg, how many times have I said it to you where if I can't explain to you the why, I've already lost you.
Yeah.
You're just going to step back and go, it's just Tuckman rambling again,
I agree with it.
There you go.
Why are we doing this podcast?
Yeah, exactly. And it all kind of, because, and that's why to anybody listening and us, even Evan said it, that Simon Sinek book is huge for that. Start with why, if we can understand that, then that's kind of foundationally what we're building on.
Nice.
All right. You want to recap what we've covered? See where we're at?
Sure.
So generating revenue.
I'm sorry?
I was just outlining the questions. The first one was about generating revenue, understanding that.
Yeah, understanding why they're in business, and if we say, why are you in business? Just the bottom line is if the business is not profitable, it's not going to be a business for long. And then number two was, how does the organization differentiate itself from competitors? FRSecure has been phenomenally successful about that. And it spawns from really the mission that Evan gave us. The third one, we didn't really talk about directly, but is what are the biggest risks or challenges the company currently faces? And that can be, I don't want to get breached, or I think statistically like 80% of the parties that engage in security do it because of compliance requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How many do you think, if you were to put a percentage of people, so let's take FRSecure, for instance, how many people do you think seek out the services of FRSecure because they've had a breach, because something has happened, and now they're like, shit, what are we going to do about this? Or how many, what's the percentage of people that are proactively trying to get ahead of the game so nothing does happen?
The proactive is estimated to be at 20%.
Hmm.
Yeah, the foundational drivers are I'm being forced to do this, through compliance, regulation, something like that. Or my competitor or my supplier just got breached, and I don't want that to happen here. Yeah. I can. There was one client I had the opportunity to serve. Awesome guys. The umbrella was private equity, so the private equity had about 6 or 8 entities, and it was one of them that I had the opportunity to serve. We totally identified what the risks were. We were able to correlate them into what the financial risk was, the business and everything. Just ran into a wall. Every month we would connect, sync up. And I was even looked, would it help if I spoke with leadership? Would that help you guys get closer to where you want to be? And it was just wall. Went in to one call. Again, we're going to dive in, but what should I know that's different from the last time we spoke? And the answer was the budget got approved. What did you do differently to produce a different result? One of the other companies got breached and got ransomware, and they don't want that to happen to any of the other companies. And it's just fist bump and move on.
Yeah.
We got the approval and do that. But it's a very low percentage, unfortunately, that do it for the spirit of it. And
that's also probably a testament to how much compliance and regulations are being rolled out and how many breaches actually happen all the time. It's hard to not be responding to that stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you think about like the third party risk that places are running into, because that is going to impact how does the company generate revenue? What is a unique differentiator? Those sorts of things. But yeah, it's and maybe this all rolls up into really understanding that the relationship as a vCISO is way more than transactional. If you're doing all of the other things right, the transactional part will fall into place.
What I'm curious, this is a little bit off track. But you mentioned that at one of your engagements, you were told that the goal was to, basically download what you do and kind of take over after that. Do you find does that happen a lot? Where people are just like, I want to hire a vCISO for a year and hopefully learn how to do it and just do it myself?
It depends. Because, and I hate using that word, but it's unique in every scenario. The dynamics, the elements are always going to be the same, but that's kind of the answer to where you're going that is where one of the most valuable, unique abilities a CISO can have is to understand where they're coming from and meet them there. I've always was say at FR Secure, the definition of success was to work my way out of the job because there's other companies that need us. So I do get a respectable over 50% saying, I want to learn what you know. And I don't know, depending on the client and where they're at, is going to more influence how long the term of engagement should be. If FR Secure has found it takes about 3 years to go from nowhere to building up a mature enough security program to that as the vCISO, we can kind of hand the baton over.
Mhm.
At that point, you've created policies, you have your committee, you've got engagement, company-wide leadership knows what's up. So if they are comfortable at that point, then let them, let the child ride the bike. The dynamic in it that we'll always know as CvCISOs is where they're at, or is that the risk they're going to face is a moving target. So we can say the establishment of a foundational program normally takes about 3 years. You can accelerate that, whatever. But at the end of those 3 years, like let's say you hire me and we start today. Just think where AI is going to be 3 years from now. That's going to be a very different risk than where we are and what we're working on today.
Right.
And so we'll get clients that at that time, hey, we're good. Maybe you reevaluate what you're doing and they don't need you as much, but they want that knowledgeable resource available. So you meet with them quarterly, something like that. That's why it's so important to ask these questions up front. So as the relationship grows organically, we're kind of on the same page navigating through it.
Okay.
Because you could be crushing it, Jordan. You're doing all of the textbook stuff right and everything, but there could be something that impacts the business. What if that founder does want to retire? Does the company have a succession plan? Or, my dad worked at a company, and it was a small company, and the owner was a small airplane enthusiast until he flew into a mountain and died. Everybody on Monday, Jesus, what do we do now?
Yeah.
It's a point being, there's internal things internal drivers, and there's external drivers. And we focus on mostly what we can control internally. And there's always going to be those external things. And our role, and that's why, dude, if I can be your friend and somebody that you trust and can confide in, then you can now feel more comfortable to go, look, I'm in a rough spot financially right now. You don't love me any less, but you're in the position that your business is in. Then we can leverage that relationship equity where I can go, all right, well, what is good for us? And do we see this being from here on out? Do we want to adjust for 6 months, 3 months? What makes sense? And if I'm there for you through the thick and thin, but the relationship's strong, you're going to feel good about me. And when you tie it into sales, you're going to be more inspired to refer me to somebody else that maybe
Yeah, great point.
So you can't do this and not care.
You gotta care.
As nasty as that may sound to some people, you gotta care.
So recapping, how does a company generate revenue? Why are you in business? What do you care about? What is your purpose, mission, passion, values, all that stuff? What differentiates this company from its competitors? What are the biggest risks or challenges the company currently faces? Which leads us then to maybe what brings us together. Why did you even think you need a vCISO? And then the last thing you touched on was, what is our definition of success from this engagement? I think that's huge. I love that addition to that list because clarity. Two people can have the same conversation and come out with two different understandings of it.
Exactly.
You gotta have clarity and write that down too. Write it down. Like, make sure it's on the paper. And I like always kind of revisiting it. Hey, you told me the definition of success from this engagement is this. Did we do that today? Did we make a step towards that today? Do you feel like you did that?
Yeah. Hey, sorry, Meg. Sorry.
No, I was just saying I like that too, and again, just that summary of understanding the why.
Yeah. And sometimes, just depending on who's in the room and who you're talking to, sometimes what is our definition of success is the best first question to ask. Yeah, of course, I'm here to do a presentation, so obviously I'm going to tell you how our program works. But if I can understand what our definition of success is, I can tell you how that can support where you're at. And that can be back to unique differentiators. That can be a very unique differentiator for you as a vCISO against perhaps the other two quotes.
Right. Yeah. The amount of people out there, no matter what they're selling, that are still probably caught up in the sales process of just telling people that they need, talking about their features and trying to convince them that they need it, rather than really coming from the other side and letting them guide that.
Yeah. How many sales presentations start that way with, this is what we do, this is why we're better, without asking, where are you? Does this have value to you, kind of a thing. So
love it. Good stuff.
Awesome. So next week is Evan's turn to pick the topic. So everybody put your seatbelts on.
Yeah.
Hear that, Evan? Evan!
I muted him.
Your topic.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about pork butts.
There you go.
Yeah, pulled pork in it. And I still got visuals of that mask he was wearing.
Yeah.
I can't shake it either.
That's going to take a weekend.
But thanks for joining in, everyone. We've finished another episode of the CvCISO podcast and looking forward to joining with you guys again next week. Bye.
Right on. Thank you all.